Okay, we're starting we're in the middle of Unit 4, but we're starting a new chapter. So this rest of this unit will all be about statistics and data analysis. Well, if I can get the slide to move. There we go. Okay, so in this first section, there's a lot of vocab. We will be looking at how to understand and explain designing experiments to collect data. We'll be looking at variability in data and how it relates to the study of statistics. We'll be looking at the difference between a survey population and a sample population. And then we'll be looking at misuses of statistics based on samples and populations. And finally, we'll be looking at statistical questions. Couple of other things, we'll be looking at some simple data analysis methods and interpretation across grade levels, and we'll be looking at statistical inferences. Okay, much of the study of statistics deals with variability of data or the amount the pieces of data in a data set differ. So it's important to understand different types of variability when designing experiments and examining data. So first of all, we have measurement variability. So suppose you ask 20 students to measure the length of a board. In a perfect world, all the measurements would be the same. However, some human fallibility will produce some different results. Okay. Then we have something called experimental variability. Experimental variability is frequently studied to see how different treatments cause different results. Okay, and then sampling variability. If we choose, for example, a set of college students to see how they react to a question, we could do that in many ways. Some ways might elicit a reaction that could be judged as a representative of the entire population. Other selection methods might produce a very biased result. So let's talk more about samples. A random sample is one in which each member of a population has the same chance of being selected. A simple random sample is a sample such that any subset of the population has the same chance of being the sample as any other subset of the same size. Sometimes people will deliberately use statistics to mislead others. This can be seen in advertising. More often, however, the misuse of statistics is the result of misinterpreting what the data and the statistics mean. So, number one, let's say that 1 million people nationwide were sent a survey, but only 50 responded. This would mean that there was only a 0.005% response. So that would certainly cause us to mistrust the ad. Let's say of the 50 that responded in step one here, let's say that 49 responses were affirmative. The 98% claim is true, but 999,950 people did not respond. Okay. So suppose a survey sentence read, "Buffapane is the best pain reliever I've tried for headaches and arthritis." And there were no questions about the kind and type of other pain relievers tried. Well, suppose all the people who received the survey were chosen from a town in which the major industry of that town was the manufacturer of Buffapane. It's very doubtful that the survey would represent an unbiased sample. Okay. Suppose only 2 pain relievers were tested. Buffapane, whose active ingredient is 100% aspirin, and then a placebo containing only powdered sugar. Okay. So when you consider an advertisement reporting that of the people responding to a recent survey, 98% said that buffepain is the most effective pain reliever of headaches and arthritis. Okay, you would need to certify that the statistics are not being misused like we just discussed in those on the previous slides. Okay, so the following information should have been reported. First of all, the questions being asked. Second, the number of people surveyed. Third, the number of people who responded. Fourth, how the people who participate in the survey were chosen. 5, the number and type of pain relievers tested. And 6, how the answers were interpreted. Without that information listed, many following situations are possible, all of which could cause the advertisement to be misleading. Okay, let's look at this example. Which of the following might provide a random sample for a statistical study of cafeteria food choices in a school, and why? Okay, so part A, let's say we have a collection of students on the playground who do not eat lunch in the cafeteria. Would that be a good random sample for statistical study of cafeteria food? No, that would be a bias sample more than likely, because the students who are on the playground are not eating lunch in the cafeteria, so they might not even know what's being served. Okay, in situation B, let's say our random sample is a collection of, or our sample is a collection of students at a single table in the cafeteria. Would that be a good random sample for a statistical study of cafeteria food choices? Okay. More than likely, this would still be a bias sample because the people who are eating together at a table, they might have influenced each other's choices in the cafeteria. Okay. So you don't know the seating situation. It could be that those people are all friends and maybe they talked each other into getting the same thing. So that would more than likely be a bias sample. Okay, what about this scenario? Every fourth student entering the cafeteria on a given day. Would that be a good random sample for a statistical study of cafeteria food choices? Okay, yeah, that one is reasonable. It has a degree of randomness because you're choosing every fourth student. However, it could be that the set of students could be influenced by absences. Maybe there's a whole group that's gone for a field trip or some other school activities that could bias the sample somewhat, but definitely a better scenario than what we saw in the other scenarios. Okay, what about this next scenario? Every fourth student entering the cafeteria on a random day. So back here, it was on a given day. This one is a random day. So yeah, this one, this scenario is the most random of all the ones given because the sample is chosen on a random day, and then choosing every fourth student is somewhat random as well. Okay, next we're going to look at underlying issues in designing studies. So the following framework for statistical problem solving was suggested for the classroom. You should formulate questions, collect data, analyze the data, and interpret the results. Okay. So let's talk more about formulating questions. For any given problem where data are needed to determine either an answer or an approach to an answer, it's important that the problem is clarified to the extent that meaningful data can be collected. So, for example, if we wanted to collect data on the appearance of an average fifth grader, we really need to clarify what it means to consider the appearance of an average fifth grader. Okay, in this example, evaluate the following questions, and we want to describe any bias or other expectations if they were asked in the given school classes. So on A, let's say for first grade, we asked, do you have a pet? Okay. That's not really a statistical question as it is deterministic. Okay, for this next scenario, let's say for grade 4, the question is how many good pets does each student in the class have? This one would be okay if you took out the word good. Okay. The word good gives a reason for biases and answers. Okay, good is not defined. Okay. Maybe that morning before school, everybody was running late because the pet had an accident. And so therefore that day, that pet might not be a good pet, but the previous day, the student might have answered the question totally differently. Okay, so you would definitely need to eliminate that word good. Okay. Okay, on part C for grade 7, let's say, do students have more pets per student as they progress from grade 1 to grade 7? Okay, this is a good statistical question that could be investigated in a school. Easy to ask, easy to answer, no bias in the question, so on. Okay, next let's look in more detail at collecting data. The next step is to develop a plan for collecting the data needed to answer the questions. An immediate question is from whom or where the data have to be collected. The context is most important. Okay. So in this example, for an individual's health blood draw, a technician inserts a needle in a vein and takes a sample. Discuss this as a collection of data. Okay, assumptions are made that blood circulates throughout the body in a uniform way, and choosing any vein to make a blood draw should give a random sample of the blood. Okay, in this next scenario, in a U.S. Census, every individual is by law counted. Typically, interviewers collect data. Discuss this as a collection of data. Okay, with the census, that is a survey that's designed to poll the entire population of the country. So in this case, there is no randomness involved in the collection. So we're not really looking at a sample, it's designed to poll the entire population. Okay, next we're going to look at analyzing the data. In analyzing collected data, we must make a decision about how to display the data or whether to report numbers to summarize them. Often discussions about how to analyze data will be made with the data in hand. However, a good plan for collecting data should include some consideration of how the data will be analyzed once it's collected. Okay. Now, for this, in the next section, we'll be looking at different ways that that data can be explained or, presented, different types of graphs and that kind of thing. So that might be in on some of the discussion when you're going to analyze it. And you'll see as we learn about the different types of graphs, sometimes One graph tells more about the data than the other, so a lot of it just depends on what it is you're collecting. Okay, next, interpreting the results. The results of data analysis must be interpreted. Some interpretations are very clear-cut, where others sometimes misuse the data. The interpretation must be related to the original questions. Okay, that finishes us up for 10.1.